Welcome to the brand new Open Air Business Podcast. In this first episode, Tally talks to Michael Fenna, a DJ and producer who now runs Marston Park, a stunning outdoor glamping and event venue in Somerset.
Okay, so tell us about the timeline from when you met Charlie.
Yeah, cool. Great. So I was living in London in Peckham and in a kind of converted school, and it was a really exciting time as Peckham was changing a lot, and that's where I met Charlie, mostly through our dogs, who became good friends. And Charlie was opening bars and restaurants in London, so he was tending to go in and have a very intense sort of 6 months setting somewhere up and getting it open and then moving on. And my background as a DJ and music producer, so we just found that we were traveling in and out of central London a lot at weird times of the night and kind of became friends that way. And after we'd known each other for a couple of years, we were sat having a beer in a trendy little ale spot in Peckham, which is, I'm sure, where lots of good ideas have sprouted from. And I sort of said to him, look, I've got a project that, I've wanted to always set up, and I've been looking at different venues over the last few years. And he said, that's funny, I kind of want to do something similar. And as it happens, my family has some land in Somerset, so you should come down and have a look. So that was in August 2015, was the first time I came down to Marston Park, and was slightly expecting just a field out the back of someone's house. And as it turned out, there was this beautiful lake surrounded by woodland. And for the next year, we just spent quite a bit of time bringing different people down just to really get a feel for, what the potential was and what could be a problem and, what could fit nicely with the ecology and the woodland here, and just trying to really understand the site. So that was quite an interesting year of friendly conversations and strolls, really. And after that year, we decided that we wanted to go for it. Mm-hmm. So that's when we set up a company and started taking everything a little bit more seriously. So from 2016, we had a good few years of sort of pre-application discussions and planning permission-y things and that side of stuff.
How did you find that journey? Because that's often, tricky for many people.
Yeah, yes, it's an ongoing journey. It's probably the best way to put it. So it's a process that we are sort of still going through, because we have long-term hopes to restore some of the ruined listed buildings on the estate, and the woodland needs a lot of management. So it's about 80% ash, so there's a lot of ash dieback, and the beautiful lake is slowly silting up. So about 5 acres of the 25-acre lake has already silted up completely. So we're going on a very long journey to try and restore this landscape back to how it was created. So it's a Victorian designed landscape. And so we were going through that process when the pandemic hit. And that was, I guess, a bit of a double-edged sword for us. It meant that the planning process became even slower, but it also created this opportunity with obviously everyone stuck in the UK and also stuck in, a lot of people stuck in cities without gardens, and just getting outside into nature became, I think everyone really began to understand the importance of that, for mental health and for, just one's well-being, and being able to socialize sort of outside was a really big deal. So we got started in August, start of August 2020 with, I think it was pretty fair just to call it like a small experiment, really.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So we were operating under a different name, and we basically set up 10 of our kind of fully furnished tents, 10 unfurnished tents, and 10 bring your own tent pitches.
Yeah. Was that on the 56-day license?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So to begin with, that was just 28 days when we first started, and it was actually whilst we were open that was extended to 56 days. So we ran for August and September in 2020, and we just had a very small bar cafe in a horse box, some decks set up and small speakers and a stretch tent as a kind of communal space, and we had a lot of different pop-up chefs coming through, and just experimenting with a lot of different yoga classes and pottery things and, all sorts of stuff. So we were just trying lots of things to see what worked. And I guess the main thing we found is that really everybody wanted to book the fully furnished tent. They only booked an unfurnished tent if they couldn't get a furnished one.
Yeah.
And then in terms of the bring your own tents, that didn't work so well for our business. At that time, we found that people tended to bring a lot of their own food and drink and leave a lot of rubbish behind and not really engage in
a different sort of clientele. I guess.
Yeah, definitely. And just not quite engage so much in the communal spaces and the music and the bar and the art and that sort of stuff at that time.
So that was a really successful experiment and an experimental time. And I guess you have some good learnings from that. And did you learn anything about the sort of the pricing? People were willing to pay the premium for the fully furnished and the whole experience.
Yeah, we learned a lot from that. So I would say, roughly speaking, the furnished tents, we charge double what we charge for an unfurnished tent. Mm-hmm. And then for a camping pitch, we probably charged half of that again. Mm-hmm. So that seemed to be roughly where the demand was. And that was sort of in line with what other people were doing around the country, because it was a time when there was a lot of people in similar boats that had been involved in, for example, festivals previously or that kind of thing, who were also setting up, businesses around the UK. And yeah, it was a really interesting time. We also learned a lot about the layout of the site. So we originally had our communal spaces on the sort of northeast side of the lake, which meant you had south-facing views, which meant you had the sun on your face and you were looking across the water. But it also meant you had the prevailing southwesterly winds on your face,
yep.
which really kind of sucked the temperature out of you. And it meant a lot of the tents were in a more wooded area, which meant you had more leaves and sticks and sap and stuff like that falling on them the whole time. So again, we didn't get that right, but we learned a lot from it. So when we came to, the winter, we sort of assessed how it had gone, and we decided that we wanted to expand things in the following year, in 2021, with all these kind of learnings that we took on board. So that's when we really began properly in May 2021, kind of taking all that on board. And so when we opened with 30 fully furnished tents, because that's
yep.
what everyone seemed to want. And we also added the Futuro house, which was really
cool.
yeah, which is probably still the coolest thing I've ever seen in my whole life. And I saw that on a rooftop in London about 5 years before we managed to get it here.
So is that still yours, or is that still Craig Barnes?
Yeah, that's Craig. Exactly. That's Craig, the artist. And that's really been the first in a series of our sort of artistic collaboration that we've had here. Mm-hmm. So it's a piece that he's lovingly restored. It used to be in South Africa, in the town where he lived. It was somebody's house, and 8 people lived in it. And it was just part of his life growing up that there was this spaceship on the edge of his town. And so when he went back to South Africa with his wife, they saw it, and he managed to agree to buy it from them. And his wife apparently agreed on the basis that one day the door would open with a remote and smoke would come out, which still hasn't happened.
Oh,
but
I'm sure you could arrange that.
I think at some point it's going to have to happen. And yeah, it's just the most spectacular piece of iconic 60s architecture. And for those that haven't seen it, it is sometimes described as a giant blue Smartie on legs. So it's very much of the kind of UFO 60s looking forward, anything's possible mentality, which is great.
And I love the interior, the furniture, the cushions, the moulded plastic. It's just insane.
A bit like a kind of Jetsons Concord lounge sort of thing.
And I understand there's only 2 in the world that you can actually stay in.
Correct, yes. There's one, it's the only one in Europe you can stay in. There's one in America, near Area 51.
Mm-hmm. Of course.
And obviously. And then the rest are mostly in museums and private collections. So we're very lucky to have it here. And it's been a great kind of first mark in the sand in terms of what we want to do at Marston Park and the way we want to collaborate with, architecture and sculptures and artists and musicians and all sorts of people. So that was our kind of first of those pieces in that journey.
And thinking about it, interestingly, when I was researching about the architect and how the sort of design intent behind that back in the 60s, it's like one of the very earliest sort of forms of glamping, because I believe it was designed as some sort of off-grid, put it anywhere cabin.
Exactly.
For, accessing bits of nature you couldn't normally do. So ski slopes and, ski chalet, things like that. It's quite interesting that we've come full circle and now the world's exploded with glamping. I understand the worldwide glamping is set to be worth something like, I don't want to know how many billions of pounds by 2027. It's quite an interesting full circle story there.
It really is. And, it was not without its problems, but it's, the idea was that it could be taken in parts on trailers up, a mountain or somewhere inaccessible like you're talking about. And then with your family, you would pop it together, have your holiday, and then you could just pack it up and take it home. It actually came on 2 lorries in pieces and takes 8 people to carry each panel into position. Right. So not as convenient as some of the modern glamping solutions, but it very much that principle. And I totally agree. That's what makes it such an interesting piece to have here and to see the journey and evolution of that sort of glamping, get out there in nature mentality.
That's wonderful. And then, so that's one of the first of your artistic installations, but I also see here on the website, you have the Bruce Monroe light exhibition. Is that correct?
Yeah, so that was really exciting. So we had that for about a year last year. And that was, again, another, we're very fortunate to have that. So he's a spectacular artist that works often with light installations. And it ran as a ticketed exhibition across the winter. And then in the summer, when we started putting the tents back up, each tent had a small sort of garden of light next to it, surrounding a fire pit. So you could sit out on the lake edge and catch the sunset with this beautiful installation around you.
Is that still there?
That's not still here. So that was a year-long installation.
And again, you've hit the trend right on for illuminations, because that's, gone wild. But I mean, not all of them are beautiful and well thought out. Some are a bit over the top, these winter light trails that you get in forests and things like that all over the place. But wow, to have that as part of the experiential offering there for guests, their own mini artistic installation. I mean, it just sounds divine.
Yeah, it was very, very, very beautiful, and really, really exciting thing to do. So that was another great collaboration. We also had some really exciting weekends with a hotel called Pikes, which is a kind of Ibiza-based, very iconic hotel with a very rich history, sort of dating back to the 80s and rock and roll days. And we did a series of weekends with them, which saw lots of, very exciting visual artists and musicians and wellness practitioners come through. And we had the likes of Groove Armada come and play, and Faceless, Horse Meat Disco and Bushwhacker and all sorts of exciting people. So they were lively weekends.
So, well, it sounds like it. So So these incredible connections you have come from your and Charlie's past sort of connections, because you're a music producer and DJ. So I'm guessing you knew all this crowd anyway.
Yes, some have come that way. Some have come through Charlie. Other people approach us, which is really nice. And I think that we're very fortunate that seems to be what's happening a lot at the moment. So
how did you get on that map? How did you get that level of exposure to attract that kind of interest from these people?
I think probably, the idea really at Marston Park was to focus on doing the most extraordinary, weird, cool things we could possibly find. And that has, I think, just sort of naturally built a little bit of momentum. We've now been running for sort of 3 years. And like I say, each time we've undertaken a sort of artistic collaboration, that's helped, spread our journey and our story into different circles and different little worlds. Mm. And we're very fortunate now that we seem to have different people sort of coming to us, and that's very much how we're looking to grow the business from here. So we have some really exciting promoters, so sort of events promoters now coming to us and scheduling events for this year and next year, right, who are bringing some great artists and things through. There's some really exciting visual artist collaborations in the pipeline. And then also we, as anyone out there who's started any sort of business like this, or most businesses will know that at the beginning, you do absolutely everything yourself. And it's no exaggeration to say that to start with, I would be DJing whilst taking photos, whilst answering the phone, whilst moving a mattress, whilst, doing absolutely everything at once. And then on the other side of the community structure, Charlie would be in the bar, cooking dinner, solving some electrical problem and juggling another 50 things on top of that. So that's very much how it started for us. Yeah. And now, and then over the last few years, again, we've done almost everything ourselves, really, in terms of the bar and the food and promoting the events and that sort of stuff. And it's now this year that actually we're going to be launching a series of partners who we're really excited to have on board. So the first of these is a fantastic traditional Japanese restaurant called Hako House, who are currently finishing setting up in some converted shipping containers on site, and it's going to be a very, very exciting addition to the local area to have this really top-notch Japanese food offering, and also really exciting for people coming to stay to experience that food with a bit of a local twist. Mm, wow. We've also got a fantastic bar partner who are based out of Bath. They run a couple of really successful places, including The Hideout, which recently won 18th best bar in the UK. So really excited to have them on board. They're going to be doing amazing cocktails. They're growing a lot of their own garnishes and exciting things like that in the area. So that, again, that's got a really lovely local story. Wonderful. And then we have a sort of cold water plunge pool and a wood-fired hot tub.
Yes, your world spa, which is boxes too, right on
exactly, trend. which has been really popular, and the interest in cold water therapy and those sorts of things is just exploding, and it's something that I've also got really into this year. And
me too.
Cool. So you're one of those winter lunatics.
Yeah, Christmas Day, absolutely.
Perfect. So we're really excited to be announcing a great business, again, local to us, called Tonic, who are going to be setting up a spa called Tonic Elements. And they're going to be doing a lot of breath work and cold water therapy and all sorts of exciting exercise and wellness classes. So we are, very, very excited to see how our story unfolds with the involvement of these people who we all very much consider to be, absolutely at the top of their game.
Well, and did you find that these collaborations were sort of, I'm quite interested in law of attraction at the moment as well. Did these things kind of, you had to really go out and hunt, or was it sort of happenstance that they kind of came into the business?
It's a bit of both. Obviously, it's a rural community around here, and although there's Bath and Bristol not too far away, it's still, people tend to kind of know each other in various circles. So some of these people had previously been down to do little pop-up things at the site over the last year or two, which is a nice way to get to know people and start working together. Others we were aware of, and we, dropped an email and they were up for a chat, and it's all kind of evolved quite naturally. Yeah. So that's been a really exciting time over the winter, actually having these conversations with them and listening to their ideas and just seeing the way that they envisage taking various aspects forward.
Yeah. Well, that is super exciting. It really is. I can't wait to see or to hear more about how that develops over the next year. Wonderful. Let's talk about how you run your memberships, because I was looking online that you now offer free access to the site anytime during your opening, and you're seasonal, aren't you? So you run from May to October, is that correct?
Yeah, so to begin with, as part of our license, needed to charge a paid membership. And it's something that we had some, bit of pushback from certain people. And we're very keen to make Marston Park a very open and inclusive and inviting space. So we managed to get our license changed. So we're delighted that we can now offer a free membership, which we call Friends of the Park. And that means you can come anytime. You can sign up in advance or at reception when you get here. And anytime that there isn't, for example, a ticketed happening or event going on, you're welcome to come through and enjoy the place. And then we also have a small gang of 1,000 people who we call our first 1,000 members, and they get a bit of a heads up on stuff that's coming, because a lot of our events and things sell out very quickly, so that kind of gives them access to tickets and various things before anyone else. So there's a couple of ways you can get involved, basically.
Wow. And obviously you can book stays quite separate to that membership offering. Is that correct? So I keep saying, is that correct?
Yeah. Could you just say one more time? Sorry.
Yeah. Can you book a stay sort of separate to being a member?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So the stays, probably the best way to talk about those is more like a hotel, really. So it's sort of a hotel without walls, and the hotel, the tents are a bit like hotel rooms in that they don't have cooking facilities and that kind of stuff at the moment. The Futura House, however, is currently being fitted with a traditional 60s sort of kitchen, and same with a wet room. So that'll be the first of our spaces that does have a sort of self-catered option.
Yeah.
And that's a way, again, that we'd like to sort of grow the business going forward, going a little bit more down that route.
I did notice that when you book a bell tent, you don't just get a bed and all the bits that you normally get in a bell tent. You also get an artist's easel and artist's supplies. Is that to encourage people to, like you say, use the landscape as a muse for their creativity?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So we find that we get a lot of musicians and painters and sculptors and writers and people breaking out of the city to come and get inspired. And I'm personally like a big believer that your surroundings and the people that you're around can have a huge impact on what you're making, whatever that is, and the way you think. So we sort of have that sort of professional level of people that come, but also what's really nice is almost everyone seems to at some point pick up the guitar in their room and smash out a song well or badly and paint something, and we get a lot of these kind of left at reception or left out on easels to look at. And what's particularly amazing is occasionally you'll walk along and there'll just be a stunning oil painting that someone's just left out and kindly given to us.
Wow.
From very famous artists. And then equally beautifully, you'll see a messy duck drawn by a 4-year-old that somehow really nicely captures a duck. So
do you display these somewhere? Have you got a gallery space where you'll go?
We do have a gallery space, which tends to be used for exhibitions, but I think we've been kind of collecting the best ones. They're actually just sat at my house, but I think that at some point it would be nice to do a history of art created on site. I think would be a nice thing to do.
Absolutely. You might find the next big thing at 4 years old, painting ducks. Right?
Exactly. You never know.
Inspired by your vibe.
Yeah.
Tell me a bit from sort of a logistics and production point of view. How did you research and acquire the structures that you're using? Because you've got 3 stretch tents, I believe. Is it the hideout, the terrace, and the glade?
Yes.
And then you've got the bell tents too. How did you go about researching and selecting suppliers for those?
So I think to begin with, a lot of time on places like Pinterest and Google Images and Instagram, just really trying to, without really worrying about the practicalities, just trying to look for things that were slightly different or just, stood out or didn't stand out, depending on kind of what we needed. And I guess starting there so I guess design led is probably the way to phrase that more succinctly. And then from there, then trying to work out, right, well, how do we, who actually sells these? Where do we get them? So the bell tents we bought new. The stretch tents we actually bought second hand. We had some help from a great production company based in Bristol with all of that. And also it's slightly sort of festival style, really, the setup on site, in that it's the power is all just laid above ground, and we've tried to be really careful to tread as lightly as we possibly can on the landscape. So a lot of it is quite temporary and festival style in its infrastructure and the way it's been put together.
Yeah. You're running this seasonally. In the off season, do you both have other jobs, or do you spend that time planning the next season? How do you spend your time?
Yeah, it's so last year we did run through the winter with the exhibition that we had open on site. So although the glamping accommodation wasn't open, the exhibition ran through the winter. This winter we didn't do that, so it has been more planning and both of us doing some other work. So I've been doing some gigs and traveling around a bit, and that's nice actually to have a little bit of a break to digest and plan and think about the best way to grow. I think probably Charlie would agree with me that one of the difficult things is when everything's up and running, your head's very focused on what's right in front of you out of necessity, which makes it quite hard to plan and think long term and make sensible decisions about the future. So I think a break can be a really powerful thing to help you
to
plan and structure.
Yeah, and process and take time out and...
Yeah, exactly. But hopefully as long term as we move towards more weatherproof structures that do have little kitchens and bathrooms in them, and we start restoring some of the old buildings, I think we will naturally become more of an all year round place. It'll just be a bit different over the winter.
Do you think
a little bit more introverted and a little bit more retreaty, and then a bit more, communal in the summer? I
love that. Often people don't want to talk specifics, and that's totally understandable. But is your business profitable? Is it moving in the right direction? Very, very much moving in the right direction. I think probably the fairest way to put it is, it's been a similar journey to, I think, pretty much all businesses, in that to begin with, you're not profitable whilst you're working everything out. And then as things begin to settle, your profitability improves. Yeah. And are you financing this through sort of personal finance, or have you got grants, or have you made use of pots of money locally through your sort of destination groups?
Yeah, bit of a mixture. So we have a great little gang of shareholders who we know. So it's all sort of people we know who are coming along for the journey with us, really. And yeah, it's set to be a long journey. There's a lot to do, and I think everyone's got on board with that in mind.
Yeah, excellent. How big is your team? I mean, you obviously have a reception when you're open. Is that still manned by you guys, or have you managed to recruit some seasonal help?
Yeah, so it's a really good question. I mean, it's flexed a lot over the last few years. I think probably at its peak when we were operating everything ourselves, there were quite a lot of part-time people, but we were probably at about 40 staff. And we made a real point of hiring a lot of young people as well. So for a lot of people, it was their first jobs in the area. We tried to hire as locally as we can. So a lot of people were cycling and walking to work. And those sorts of businesses, I just think are very important for a local community to, give people their first jobs, help train them up, give them an slightly unusual experience and exposure to different things. So that's how it's been at its peak. And then due to the seasonality and various changes, it bounced up and down wildly, from just Charlie and myself all the way up to that and everything in between.
Yeah, that's just reminded me something, actually, your sort of outlook in terms of employing local people and supporting the community. That ties in well with what I was going to ask you about your sustainable tourism policy. You outline really nicely on your website some of the things that you're doing and looking to do around that. Can you tell us a bit about your approach to sustainability in the business?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a really interesting place that we're in because it is essentially an important historic landscape, and one that is really important for the biodiversity that lives here. But it is a failing landscape, and it's one that, through a combination of things, so through the woodland, through ash dieback in the woodland, about 80% of the woodland has ash dieback, and it is going to fall over within the next 5-10 years, it's estimated. So there's a huge job to undertake there to fell that and then to replant it with a mixed uneven age woodland. The lake, as I mentioned earlier, is really badly silting up. So it used to be about 3 meters deep, we believe. It's now only about 3 foot, 2 foot in some places.
Yeah.
So that means that we're very prone to bad algae blooms, and with temperatures rising, that problem's set to get worse and worse. So we sort of see that really our focus is to undertake that restoration, and we believe the best way to do that is to have these sort of small scale hospitality business on the site. Historically, as is the case in lots of places, there used to be a commercial shoot on this site, which used to see thousands of birds each year, which isn't great for the balance in the ecology. So that's something that we've stopped, and we've also we're quite far from mains, so we do have generators at the moment, but we've been experimenting with solar and battery to try and understand the power usage in different parts of the site, which has been really interesting and it's heating stuff really that is the killer. The reception area, which is quite light touch, of this one battery we have would run for 8 hours, but then you boil a kettle and it halves the time. Or the same with the entire communal space, where sometimes there's been 5 people with this highly directional sound system and lights and drinks and fridges. Again, we can run that for about 8 hours from a battery, but you turn the coffee machine on and again, it just sucks it down to half an hour. So it's about trying to, I think, implement the battery solar solutions and other technologies like that, but also, choosing equipment very carefully going forwards. And that might mean, for example, moving to more sort of filter coffee rather than, stuff coming out of a big coffee machine. Exactly. So it really feeds into all of the decisions, and it's not. I think it's not easy. I think is probably the first thing I'd say. It's not something we find easy. There is obviously a lot of information out there, but some things just don't work as well as you expect and aren't really fit for purpose when you actually start using them. So,
cool. Okay, so these last couple of questions, it's really about how are you planning to keep ahead of the competition, if indeed you have any competition, because you've got an incredible USP here with what you're doing. And part of that would be, who are you looking at? Who is inspiring you? Or is this a construct completely of your own that you've kind of put together?
Yeah, really interesting question. So I think that when we started our journey, the idea of a space that was inspiring to come and stay in was, reasonably new. And I think that although there were sort of little one-off examples of retreats and one-off cabins and things scattered around the world, that's definitely a wave of, remote co-working and rural, escapes to kind of get inspired. It's definitely something that's gathering more and more momentum. And there's some, obviously, really interesting bits and bobs going on at places like Birch and Soho Farmhouse and various other kind of glamping sites, and a lot of really beautiful boutique festivals and meadows in the mountains and all sorts of exciting things kind of happening all over the world. And Daft Studios in Europe is a really exciting kind of studio retreat space. So those are some of the things that we enjoy going to or keeping an eye on. I think that for us, we are making quite a marked shift this year in bringing on the partners I was talking about earlier, because I think what we've recognised, and we're very much we're not reinventing the wheel here at all. This is something that lots of people will do, but quite often when you go and stay at a hotel, the restaurant is Frankie's, and it's nothing to do with the hotel, and it's in that space. And I think with a lot of these partners, what's been really exciting is not just the operational benefits it brings in terms of having less plates to keep spinning at once. It's also the innovation that they're all bringing, because they're all really experts in their own field and pushing things forward in what they do. And so that, we believe, is the best way to try and grow the business long term.
Yeah, makes
and
sense.
to sort of try and keep all of the pieces doing something really exciting.
Yeah, that makes absolute sense. I think
that's a theory.
That's a
anyway,
theory. Wow.
That's the theory. So let's see.
It looks good on paper. I hope it. Well, I'm sure it will pan out well in reality. I think finally, I'm going to ask you, busy people that you are, how do you relax, and how does your family life fit into being entrepreneurial in this sector?
That's a very good question. I think you have to create the time. I think it's probably been my big learning from the last few years, that if you don't create the time to, make time for yourself to have, a hobby or go for a walk or spend time with friends or family, it won't happen. And you won't necessarily be any better at your main job because it's that classic, from being a kid, staying up really late, trying to finish homework and coursework, and it just becomes rubbish by the end because you're just so tired.
Yeah.
So I think that's the real skill, and something that's very difficult. I find very difficult. And so I think the key to it is to build in the time for yourself, so that when you are focused on a project, you're at your best. So yeah, currently really enjoying getting in cold water as much as I can. Quite nervous that the water's not going to be cold enough in the summer, but we'll find a way to deal with that. And yeah, enjoying playing paddle and making a lot of music. And we're very lucky. There's some great pubs in the area, lovely walks around here, and just I think Charlie and I both enjoy going and seeing what other hospitality businesses are doing around here, because it's a really exciting time for this part of Somerset. There's all sorts of stuff opening and developing, and there's things like the Newt that opened not too long ago, and Hauser and Worth, and some great pubs in the area, the Bath Arms up the road that some friends are taking over, and the Pretty Pear in Bruton, and there's all sorts of great little niche places popping up all over the place. So it's a really exciting time to be in the area.
Yeah, so you can mix work with pleasure, because you're kind of researching and building connections, but having a nice
exactly.
time.
Yeah, exactly.
And is there any sort of mantras that you live your life by or do business by?
No, but there probably should be. I guess.
Make one.
Yeah, I think no, it's a really good question. But I think we know what we're trying to do here, and there probably should be some mantras that we have, but we don't yet. So maybe I'll let you know in the future if we think of any.
Yeah, we'll see it in neon somewhere on one of your venues.
Yeah, exactly.
Wonderful. Okay, well, I think that's the end of our conversation for Entrepreneurs Chat. Wonderful. Take care. Thank you.
Cheers.
Bye.
Thanks so much.